What is it like to actually get a job in 2026?
Elevating your skill set. There's a skill set in applying for jobs. On LinkedIn, for example, they have like job alerts and you just respond to it. You have to go further than that. The clever applicants or candidates are the ones that actually find the organisation, connect in with the hiring managers, actually send their CV, not just do that automated application that LinkedIn does.
This is a game of exclusion, right? When I look at somebody's CV, I'm either going to put it in the in tray or the out tray. I'm looking for what people don't have. Those are the easiest people to exclude.
We are joined today by two professionals, Raymond and Kagiso Rangaka, who sits at the very heart of recruitment and talent strategy. Together, we unpack the myths, challenge the assumptions, and reveal what truly separates candidates who get hired and those who don't.
What are you guys trying to avoid when you hire someone? 1,000 people apply. You're trying to get the best candidate, the best fit, like you said.
You're trying to include people through excluding.
Red flags in interviews. What are those red flags that you see in that candidate and you're like, no, this is like a red flag?
It's a red flag when you're not able to articulate what is clearly missing.
When people come in overconfident, it's usually men. There's such a thin line between confidence and arrogance. You're not going to fit in here. I don't even like you already. When I say win me over, I need you to have a likeable character. I never understand when someone goes into an interview and they have no questions. What would my first 30 days look like here? What are you expecting to see from me? How would you feel if once I'm in the role, I see things that could be improved? Are you open to hearing some feedback for growth and development here?
Would you hire somebody you don't like, but you know is good for the job?
I would.
Welcome to the show, Michelle. And of course, welcome to the show, Kagiso. How you guys doing?
All good? All good?
Very well. Thanks for having us.
Okay, so 2026 has to do 26 spin. Because some persons are saying it's been all energetic. Some persons are saying it's a lot very strategic. So what's like 2026 for you so far?
I'll defer to the madam. Ladies first.
Ladies first.
You want to hear what I've got to say first? Well, what can I say? I feel like it's been a bit of a challenge, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Coming from the UK and coming with all these big ideas, I was definitely stopped in my tracks.
Okay.
But at the same time, I found ways to circumvent that. And I believe in the power of self-belief, the power of God, and that's just getting me through. And so I want to move from surviving now and I want to be thriving. So by Q2, we're going to be thriving.
Amazing.
Yes.
I like the optimism.
Yes.
How about you, Kagiso?
Yeah, look, it's been very challenging. A lot of people will say this. We're only in, end of Feb, March. It feels like an entire year has already gone by. I don't know. Like, every year that I spend in Dubai, it feels like that. The year gets shorter and shorter.
Okay.
It's been a challenge, but it's been good. On the personal side, the family is happy. This is all we can ask for as husbands and as fathers and as brothers. On the work front, work is challenging, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the year that I'm starting to see a lot of what I'm doing bear fruit. So when you combine those two, you have happiness, you have you've got ambition, you've got something to work towards. So I'm hoping 2026 will add all of those together.
Yeah, for me, I'm very optimistic. Last year I took a lot of chances. A lot more chances I took last year and it paid off, though I had some disappointment. But 2026, I'm very optimistic. Like, I'm going to hit it this year. And if you put those goals, like for Michelle, I always see her, and she's very, 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 bent on goals, smashing your goals. And I like that. So you watching, you just have to stick around and you get the very best nugget, wisdom and motivation from Michelle. So we're talking about work today, HR. I have to HR professionals that have spent over a decade doing this business. So I think the first place to start is people want to know, how to secure jobs or employment in today's competitive, markets, beyond just applying for roles. So I just want to ask, what is it like to actually get a job in 2026?
So I think for me, it's all about elevating your skill set, because the way that, and there's a skill set in applying for jobs. So that's what I'm talking about, not the skills that you bring to the table, but even applying for jobs. So gone are the days where it's just literally on LinkedIn, for example, they have like job alerts and you just respond to it. You have to go further than that. And I think the clever applicants or candidates are the ones that actually find the organisation, connect in with the hiring managers, actually send their CV, not just do that automated application that LinkedIn does. Okay. You need to go a bit further. You've got to also use your network. So especially out here, I'm finding that the traditional hiring ways is compounded by your network, actually knowing the right people who's going to get you in through the doors, rather than just applying the traditional way. So you've got to be a bit more savvy, use your skills, and people say, oh, what about AI? But you know what? I would even say go against using AI to apply for jobs, because recruiters are not silly. They know when something's been AI formatted, AI written. They are now looking for authenticity in their hiring process. So you could use AI just to tighten your language, but I wouldn't use AI to apply for jobs. I wouldn't.
Okay, you said something about skills. Mm-hmm. People have to use their skills. So what kind of skills should one have in 2026 while looking for a job?
People, social skills. Your social capital is going to help you get a job much quicker than the traditional ways. When you look on LinkedIn, you see one job and like 400, 500 people have applied for it. And you're like, how are you going to stand out really? Okay. Because sometimes you can be overqualified, and we have applicant tracking systems and all of these other AI tools to help with recruitment, which very rarely do help. They just help with the load. It doesn't help with the quality of candidates. So you have to use your social capital. I really believe so.
Okay. And to Kagiso, from your years in HR, what do most job seekers completely misunderstand about the hiring process?
I think, first of all, they misunderstand that I don't work in HR as such. I'm a recruiter, right? I know we sit under the umbrella of HR. But HR is very broad. There's compensation and benefits. There's people experience. There is training and development, right? So I sit in an arm of HR called recruitment. Now, there are some companies where recruitment sits in procurement, which is quite strange. But if you think about it, what my job is to do is to try and find people, hire people who are going to work for a specific company. So effectively, what I'm doing is selling the company to candidates and selling the candidates to the companies. So that's the first misunderstanding. I work in the recruitment department of HR.
Okay.
Why this is important is because I think the mindset changes when you speak to a recruiter as opposed to speaking to an HR person.
What's the difference?
So when you speak to somebody in HR, you are already there, right? I need to put in my leave, or I've got a complaint, or I want to learn about AI. How do I get these courses and these skills? I'm the very first person you speak to before you even get into the company, right? As a recruiter, my job is to try and get you into the company in the first place. So there's no difference in that we are all working with human beings, and we all have the same goal to try and bring the best people on board. It's just that where our life cycle fits is completely different. So I'm speaking to Ken. Ken is yet to join the company. Michelle, you'll be speaking to her when you have already joined the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because I get to meet you first before I get into the company. So when you see my resume, or my CV as they call it, what does your brain tell you? The three things that your brain tell you?
So you've heard the rule that recruiters spend on average 30 seconds to a minute looking at a CV. That is true. It's horrifying, but it's the truth. We just skim through a CV and look for keywords, right?
Such as?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's a practice, unfortunately, that goes beyond me, and it came before me, right? There's not really much I can do about it. But you need to be able to stand out in that minute, right? So a lot of people, what they're doing, those that don't use AI, as Michelle was saying, is how do I tailor my CV to a specific role, right? So I hire specifically for tech people. So if I'm a tech person and I'm saying in my job spec, I need somebody with 5 years of experience in C# development in a B2B SaaS environment, for example. Those are some of the things you need to have on your profile, right? That's what I'm going to be looking for. So the question then becomes, how do you find the good or the decent or the most suitable candidate through everything that through all the keywords and through all the buzzwords, and that's the difficulty. You need to stand out, and you need to be able to be concise and clear.
So how can I stand out amongst probably more than 2,000 or 20,000 CVs that you check?
So as Michelle was saying, so I work for a very big company in Dubai. I advertised a role yesterday, a CRM manager. We have more than 2,000 applications already, just yesterday. Despite what they say, we have to go through all those profiles. Yes, we've got an ATS. Yes, it can give you, you can have some keywords, but you still have to look at all of those profiles. Standing out is conciseness. It's being able to speak to what you have done, not just the fact that you've done it. I don't know if that makes sense, but the thing that I look at when I look at somebody's profile is when they say, this is what I did, and what I did X, Y, and Z. It cut costs, or it improved our rates of shipping software, or it made my job as an HR person or as a TA person that much easier. That's the only thing I look at, is what did you actually do, and how did it affect yourself and people working around you. So
to you, Michelle, I've had a conversation prior to this particular episode about your job that you do in HR. So just to add to what he said, for you, anytime you look at a CV, what comes to mind when you're trying to select people or go around your job?
So actually, I actually sit in HR. I don't sit in recruitment.
Okay.
So I don't see very many CVs, interestingly enough.
Okay.
But in the past, I've done, obviously, I've gone through lots of CVs. And for me, I'm trying to find the person in the skills. I'm very much a people person. And I feel like sometimes we hire for the skill and not for people, not for character. So I want somebody who's going to, because 2,000 CVs, they're all going to have had CRM experience. So what is different about person A as opposed to person B? So now I want to find the personality in who's got the personality, who's going to gel with our current team, who's going to be a cultural add, not necessarily a cultural fit, who's going to add something different. So I'm looking for something different. So I know they're all going to have the expertise and the competence, but now I want to see who's got the personality, who's going to bring a bit of flavour, who's going to come in and push the boundaries just a little bit to make us think bigger and innovate better. So I look at hobbies. I actually do look at their hobbies.
Really?
Yeah. Because if they're just boring and have done nothing, don't do anything interesting, I'm thinking, do we really want you here?
So Michelle, it's all about the personality, not just the skills.
Yes, I think it's really because because in HR I do a lot of work within teams. I do a lot of work within team cohesion and culture. I have to make sure this person is going to add value to the culture that we already have. So I know they've got the skills. Everyone's got the skills, but not everybody has the character.
I have a question. How do you find that just by looking at somebody's CV? It's easy when you're speaking to them.
Yes, easy, exactly.
Once you are in that setup that, okay, I'm now interviewing you, that's very easy. But like when you have just the CV.
Do you know what I look at? Usually the second page, or depends how many pages. Who wants to see a CV more than two pages? True. But there's a section where it will say something like around personal or professional development. So I want to see, what do they do outside of work? Because as HR, we are part of like CIPD or SHRIM, right? And So I want to see that they've actually done some professional qualifications, and I don't like when they just say I read, but if it's a tech, they're going for a tech role, have they created an app or something like that? That just shows actually they've got personality. There's something more to this person. So that's what I look at as well.
While listening to you now, something just strikes a chord, and you said something about being concise. So. And you also said something about nobody wants to look at a CV more than 2 pages.
I know where this is going.
So how is a job seeker in 2026, despite the country or the continent the person lives, prepares a concise CV that doesn't turn you off when you open it?
This is I get this question a lot. Like, what is the perfect length for a CV, right? You get this as well. Is it 2 pages? Is it 3 pages? I mean, if you've got 30 years of experience, can you condense that into 1 page or 2 pages? Probably not, right? You might need 3 pages or even 4 pages. I think it depends on what are you trying to capture. If you're trying to capture the fact that I have the experience for this specific role, or you're trying to say I have experience generally, because Michelle will back me up on this. There are some skills that you can always teach that comes through experience. Does this person have the aptitude to learn those skills? And so you get those types of CVs, those that are very focused, and they'll drill down on the fact that it's a 2-page CV. This is what I've done, and I believe I can do this job. Then there are those that are a bit longer. Maybe I haven't done what you're looking for, but I have the ability to learn.
Yes.
The hardest part is how do you match the two together? And
I think in course of the show, we look at talent acquisition. I think also talent, shortages. Because when I did the research, I saw that there's this space in the hiring process. But quickly, let's also look at the fact that when people are looking for a job, or when a company wants to, hire people, the HR department, basically, what are you guys trying to avoid when you hire someone?
That's HR's job.
Because you probably you apply for a role, or probably you put an ad, or probably a vacancy for a role. So you have 1,000 people apply, right? So you're trying to get the best candidate, the best fit, like you said. So what are you trying to avoid, as HR?
Gosh, that's a hard one.
Difficult question.
That's a good question.
That's a really difficult question.
What are we trying to avoid?
I think it's hard enough in talent acquisition specifically that when you look at it, this is a game of exclusion as already it is, right? When I look at somebody's CV, I'm either going to put it in the in tray or the out tray. I'm looking for what people don't have. Those are the easiest people to exclude, right? So if I look at your CV and you don't have X, Y, and Z, already I'm excluding it. Now, it's probably wrong, because Michelle, what she does, she looks at hobbies. I'm not even interested in that. I'm just like, this person doesn't have C# skills. I'm not interested in your. So it's already you're trying to include people through excluding them. So from that 1,000 people, we now have 100 people. 900 have been excluded, right? So that's. I know it's not what are you trying to avoid, because then there are things that you look out for during the interview, right? Okay, so does it match up with what they're saying? Is the experience really there? Could I be able to get a reference on you, and everything ties up? And then we've got a matrix that we look at called quality of hire, right? That's what they track. Like, has that person after 6 months, what did they actually do after 6 months? But for me, once you sign your contract, I move on. Then you become Michelle's problem.
Okay, so because I want us to, kind of unravel what really happens in the hiring process, because I've been in a situation, of course, in the early part of my career where I had to apply for jobs. I see people that are applying for jobs and all of that. So I want to understand what's like in the mindset of the HR or the recruiter or probably the company. What do they try to avoid when they're looking for a candidate? But I believe you were able to shed more light on that. But is hiring about, and this is for you, Michelle, is hiring about finding the best candidate or avoiding the wrong one?
Jeez, you're on a roll, aren't you?
Yes. I think it's avoiding the wrong one, if I'm honest, because when you're in HR, you're working for the company, and the company has a finite budget. So it's best to eradicate the wrong ones, and we're left with a bunch of good people, and then we can sift through that. So if I look through a CV and then there's like grammatical errors and things like that, spacing, I just like, all right, quick. That's a quick get rid. I don't even need to second guess. That's a quick get rid, because I only have certain amount of time to find this candidate, because there's internal mechanics going on. We need to hire by this time, and so it's a quick elimination process. So my thing is how it's about eradicating the wrong people quickly.
This is where there's a bit of tension between TA and HR, right? Michelle quite correctly said, we work for the company. But as TA, you work for both.
Yes.
Your candidate is your client. The company you work for is your client as well. So I get into a lot of trouble where we have a budget and the candidate is asking for this much, and the company's like, this is how much we're going to pay them. And that tension is, no, I need you to pay this person this much, because now you're moving them from some other country. Dubai is more expensive. They've got kids. They've got all of these other things. How can we all come together? So yes, I work for you. You're my company. You pay my salary. But I also work for this person, because my job depends on whether I'm able to hire people. They don't care about people who don't get hired. That's how they measure me. So there's always a bit of friction between TA and finance and HR, because they've got budgets that they need to maintain. I've got people I need to hire.
You know, I listened to one of my mentors. He's very strong on hiring the right people, and he said he spends much of his time in the day making sure he hires the right people, because when you hire the right people, it saves your company time, resources. Hiring the wrong person takes your company 6 months backwards. So that was why I asked this question, because I want to know, because when companies want to hire people, are they looking like, okay, am I avoiding the wrong person? Am I hiring the right person? But let's look at something very important here, which is red flags in interviews. And especially, I'll start with you. What are those red flags that you see in that candidate in interviews, and you're like, no, this is like a red flag? Because I believe people watching this, they need to understand. That's the essence of the topic, right?
Like, a lot of people won't relate to this, but the other day I got on to, I switched on my Google Meet, and it was an AI face. Like, I know you've been hearing about this. The person that I was talking to had misrepresented themselves on their CV. They were not who they were. So I asked them, please just wave your hand in front of your face, and they were like, no, I can't, because I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is actually
ridiculous.
Actually true. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Obviously, that's a big red flag. That's on the way extreme of red flags. The inability to translate what you have on your CV to the experience that you're able to share with me, right? So if I'm speaking to Michelle, if you're speaking to me, Ken, I don't need my CV in front of me, right? I need to be able to look you in the eye and say, this is my experience, this is what I've done, this is where I went to school, this is the achievements that I've had over my career. It's a red flag for me when I see you constantly looking at other places, or you're not able to tie in why you left a specific place, right? So you were at this company for 6 months. You went another 6 months without finding a job. I know it's difficult, but what were you doing in that time, and why had you left? And you're not able to articulate that. Sometimes it's just because the person might not be very confident, but it's a red flag when you're not able to articulate what is clearly on your CV. It's a big red flag for me.
Okay. And you, Michelle?
Yeah, and I have to agree. I think confidence plays a big thing, but also communication. And like you said, if you have a problem communicating what you do, it's your life, your CV is your life.
Okay.
There's a problem. And I find as well, another red flag, I think when people come in overconfident.
Yeah.
We want confidence, right?
Okay.
But that
So how can you
it's like-
distinguish between confidence and overconfidence?
So I'm going to do a gender thing here.
Okay.
It's usually men. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
just
true.
do a
That's
gender
very
thing.
true.
It
That's
is.
very true.
The men will come in like, yeah, I know I've got this, and which is great. We love all of that. But there's such a thin line between confidence and arrogance. And it's like, no, you're not going to fit in here. I don't even like you already. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
Okay.
my thing is, you also have to win over the recruiters in front of you.
Okay.
And although we want to, have a standard framework of how we do things, but when I say win me over, I need you to have a likable character. And when you're just so the men always they're always overconfident, and the women can be slightly underconfident. They undersell themselves, and I don't know. Well, I do know what it is. It's we've had to with women.
Is it an ego thing or?
With men, it's definitely an ego, and they're the always ones that always want something more than what was in the budget. The women go way under budget because they feel like if I go under, I feel that I'll get in. But sometimes that works against you. My thing is there's such a thin line, and you have to find how to balance that so you're not overconfident that you just put the recruiter on the back foot, and then you're underselling yourself and your answers are really short. I never understand when someone goes into an interview and they have no questions for me.
Yeah.
Don't you want to find out?
Yeah.
And I love the ones who say things like, and I do this, right, using my NLP skills. Well, when I used to apply for jobs, I used to say, so let's imagine I get the job. What would my first 30 days look like here? What are you expecting to see from me? So imagine I'm sitting on the desk, and you see it's an NLP thing. You get the recruiter to imagine you there, and then they walk through what they're expecting in 30 days. And then you, as an applicant, a candidate, you say, okay, I can see that happening. How would you feel if once I'm in the role, I see things that could be improved, some ways that we can shape the process better or the outcomes? Are you open to hearing some feedback for growth and development here? As a recruiter, I'm like, oh, okay.
Impressive.
Talk to me. Impressive.
Okay.
So now, because remember, it's a two-way thing. You're being interviewed as much as the company is the company a good fit for me as well? So, I like people who ask questions and give me questions as a recruiter. Oh, actually, this is interesting. Now we're having a conversation.
All right.
Just one thing. One question I had for you. Would you hire somebody you don't like, but is good for the job?
I think I would, which I personally would, only because my thing is I'm not going to be here forever. They don't need to work with me, but I know they're going to be good for the job. So it's going to make me look good in the company's eyes.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. You said something about being overconfident. I think and you said something about the male gender being overconfident, and I want to say something. And of course, it's a question to you, Michelle. Don't you think that most people, especially for men, they feel like if I don't sell myself enough, I'll get undervalued and underrepresented, and they want to make you understand that, okay, this is me, I have it. So in as much as we say, okay, they might appear overconfident, don't you think they try to sell themselves well enough to you?
There's a difference between that, Michelle, and the only reason why I applied, or I don't really need the job, or your company's not really big enough for me. I mean, then why did you apply? Honestly, why are we here? Exactly. Why are we having this conversation?
I think I think what the men need to do is just, show up, share your skills, like you were saying, show the results of the impact you made. Because what I tend to happen is they just sat in a project. They were just a part of the project. But we want to find out, what did you do that got this result? And to share that, rather than to say, oh, I ran the whole project, when they didn't run the whole project. They contributed. So say you contributed the project and I still was able to get this result. Where, and women, when they ran it, they, sometimes they'll just say, oh, I ran this small project. So I listened to things like small project, and then I'll say, what made it small? And then when you hear the numbers behind it, that's not small. Okay. But you're saying small. So if I didn't, go down the second line of questioning, you would have made me think that you were just working on a small project. So I think women just need to just show up, to be more confident and share what you really did and be unafraid to do that.
Kagiso, when you look at a candidate or an applicant, do you look at, physical appearance?
No, not at all. In fact, I don't like CVs that have people's faces on them. I don't know why people do that. I'm not interested in your physical appearance at all, actually. No.
Okay. And we cannot have this conversation without talking about pay, money. Of course, that's the reason why we're getting the job, right?
Yeah.
So what's the professional way to discuss pay without sounding money-driven?
The first point that we look at is, excuse me, is the data, right? What I do, I can't speak for other recruiters, is I'm very upfront with candidates. I will tell them, this is the budget. And I'm not even giving you 2/3 of the budget. I'm not giving you 1/3 of the budget. This is the budget. If you ask for anything over that, I won't be able to help you. So let's talk, right? So if you say to a candidate, so I hire from all over the world, European candidates, American candidates, when you ask them what's your salary, they'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you that, right? I don't have to tell you that, right? But when you say to them, here's our budget, what are you looking for? It becomes a completely different story. They'll say, well, my current salary is this. They always start by saying, my current is this. This is how much I get in as my basic salary, my fixed, my bonus, the shares if I'm working for a company that has LTIPs or RSUs. And I won't look at anything less than this, right? And you don't even have to tell me why. I know you've got a family, you've got kids, you've got a house, you might have a yacht, you might have a Bentley, who knows, right? So it then becomes a conversation to say, well, you won't be paying taxes if you come to Dubai. Now it's a completely different story. Would you accept maybe 30% less than what you're earning as your basic salary for the fact that it might be a 12% improvement once you're in Dubai because you won't be paying taxes? Then it becomes a conversation. Then I go to HR, and whatever figure you gave me, I give a higher figure to HR. I say, HR, he's looking for X amount. Knowing that in the space between what your expectations are and what HR is willing to pay, we'll be able to come to an accord of some sort.
So it doesn't give you like a bad feeling when someone, try to sound too money driven? Is that a bad thing, by the way?
No, of course not. There's certain circumstances where it is, where we've already offered you, right? So you and I have already had this conversation, and then the offer comes, and then you realize, oh wow, I didn't realize it was going to be that easy. Then you come back and say, I'm not going to sign this. I want more money. Then it's a problem. Then it's a problem, right? Because I thought we'd had this conversation, and you've already lost my trust.
Yeah.
And I'll go to the HR and I'll go to the hiring manager and say, let's not move ahead with this person.
So is it scary, or does it give you a very wrong impression, for an applicant that is too money driven?
It's risky because if they're money driven, you come to our company, what's to stop you in 3 months getting more money and going to another company, right? So the questions we always ask is, why do you want to join? Like, why did you apply for this job? For me, that's very important. If you say to me, it's for money, and then you tell me I've been working for this company for 5 years and haven't had a raise, that's a completely different story, right? Because my question would be, why don't you just stay at your company? They'll give you more money. They're like, no, I haven't had a raise in 5 years. That's a completely different story, right? And so the whole concept of, are you on a market-related salary has never made sense to me, because what market, first of all, and what are the circumstances that person is in? So for me, it's risky if all you want is money, because nothing stops you. It's no longer about, well, I want to join the fact that you guys are working on some interesting projects, or I'll be able to grow in my career, and I see myself having a family here. It's now about, can you give me a bump in my salary?
But there's this cliche, it's all about the money. We'll work for the money, right?
Michelle?
Because I believe the reason why I wake up in the morning, okay, and that's like what most persons will say, that okay, I have to pay the bills, I have to do things. I need the money. So in as much as we want to talk about the whole hiring process, everything boils down to the pay. So that was what I was asking. A candidate being money driven, how bad is it? What kind of impression does it give to you as actually the HR expert or professional?
I think it can be a turn off if that's all they're talking about is money. If they're leading with money, and most people, like you say, what's your salary expectations? And they'll give you a figure which was not quoted on the application, and I'll say, do you realise that the role you're applying for is 10% less or 20% less of what you're saying?
Okay.
And they were saying, well, I'm hoping I can work and then I can progress. And then I'll say, so if you progress, because progression in jobs doesn't always equate to monetary progression. So I want to find somebody who is happy to get whatever the role is paying, but they're also open to other things within the organisation which may eventually lead to pay, but that's not what we lead with. So because I do a lot of work around entrepreneurship, right? So these are the entrepreneurial employees. So once they've been hired, and when organisations want to innovate quicker, I get them to think about who in the employee pool is similar to an entrepreneur. That they're always thinking of great ideas, they like to push the boundaries, and for that I try and get them to create a budget where we can pay them more. So you can't just come to the job and just think, actually, if I start, I'm going to make this amount of money in the next 6 months and 5 months, and you're not really doing anything different to get it. So my thing is, the job price, the job salary is the job salary. You either take it or leave it.
Okay.
You either take it or leave it. And once you're in, so that you take it or leave it, and then you come over to me and I see how else are you adding value to the company? Because when we're talking about increments of money, they come to HR and they say, oh, what are you seeing? And I'm saying, oh, actually, person A, they're going over and beyond their job description. Because most people want to get paid more money without doing more what's on their job description. So show me ones that are going outside, who are doing some more, I call it like role enhancement, like they're paid to do this, but I see that they're supporting this team as well, and they want to get involved in ERG projects, which are like employee resource groups. They're thinking of other ways. Now those are the people I'm going to definitely put forward to get paid.
You said something very striking, and this is from my years of experience working for companies and all of that. You said when the management wants to, create a raise in the company, they come to you and they ask for people that, go above their job description. But isn't it said that as an employee, you just do your job, your basic job, and you don't step outside of your basic job? Because I've heard people say, come to work, do your job description, don't overstep your job description. But you're saying, and from your coming from the management point of view, that when the company wants to raise pay, they look at people that do more than the bare minimum, right?
Yeah.
So to that person watching this now, of course, employees are watching this, is it advisable to always push yourself and do beyond your job description because you're going to get pay or rise?
So every company is going to be different, but remember, companies are run by humans as well. So so anyone that sits in HR, they know the ones that go over and beyond, and they're not doing it because they want to get paid more. You can just tell they're that type of person. Why don't we reward that type of person? If you had 2 children and you got one child is just good, does what they need to do, and the other one that spreads the bed or helps mummy cook food, you want to give them a bit more pocket money.
All right.
Is that a thing? Because actually, and it's the same with employees. Yes, you can come and do your job, and there's nothing wrong with just coming and do your job. But understand, you're going to get the same salary every month.
Yeah,
you're going to get it at the end of the year when we've got a bit more, when the company's made a bit more profit. There might be a profit share through departments as well. But then we look at who's really stepped up. Who's contributing more. And we think, why don't we reward them with a bit more of a bonus?
Amazing. I hope you're watching this. You're actually getting these nuggets. But let's look at something. And this is for you, Kagiso. What's one hiring belief you held early in your career that you no longer believe today?
I thought, foolishly, that the school that you went to somehow equated to you being an excellent employee. Like, it was such a stupid thing. I don't know why I used to think that. So the first thing I'd do is look at where a person went to university or where they went to high school, and I just automatically thought that if you can get into Stanford or Harvard or Oxford, you are a great employee. Yeah, we learned that the hard way.
That's wrong?
It's completely wrong. Completely wrong. And in fact, the people who went to all of those schools are the people that Michelle is talking about, the bare minimum. But the ones who didn't go to those schools, they might work with people from those schools, and they're motivated to do better. They're motivated to go the extra mile. So that, I don't understand why I had that belief. It's not like I went to a good school, so I don't know where that came from, but it's a belief I no longer hold. And in fact, I try and evangelize this amongst the team as well, that don't use that as even a company that you used to work for. I used to work for Facebook, I used to work for Google. You must be a great employee. No. So those two things, where you used to work and what school you went to, I no longer hold as self-evident truths.
And you, Michelle?
Wow. So I used to, I think I mentioned it slightly before, I used to look for people who will fit within a culture that we have already. So, and that was always my thing until I had one person and I just thought, well, she's a bit different, and she was a bit of a wild card, I would say.
Okay.
But I thought she might be able to add something different, and she did. And so that's a big thing for me, not just to hire for cultural fit, but to also recruit for culture add. Are they going to add something new to what we have? And because companies always want to innovate, there's so much challenges and so much competition. If you just keep the same culture and the ways of being, the ways of doing, the same behaviours, how are you going to remain competitive when things are always evolving and changing? So yeah, I'm happy to look at a CV and see who's a wild card.
I see.
Maybe.
Okay, amazing. But let's look at, talent shortage and hiring difficulty, and I'll pull up some data, which, according to global data I checked out, 76% of employers globally report that talent shortages the highest ever recorded. Also, 67% of the HR professionals say competition for skilled talent is the biggest hiring challenge. Your thoughts on this, Michelle?
What's the last one you just said to me?
I said,
yeah.
HR professionals say competition for skilled talent is the biggest hiring challenge.
Yeah. Do you know why? Because I think there's a lot of skilled people. There is a lot of skilled people. So now, us as HR, and recruiters, we need to be better skilled at finding the gem in amongst so much great people, because a lot of there's the people who apply, apart from the ones who just apply for anything. I'm talking about the ones that really want the job. We have a lot of candidates that look the same because obviously they might be using AI or whatever, but they're really skilled. And now we have to be even better skilled at finding the right person, because I think there's more skilled people out there than there are underskilled. And so now the competition is more fierce, but that means the onus is on us. How are we going to decipher between good and better and great? I think that's the skills that we need to learn.
Kagiso?
Yeah, look, I mirror what Michelle is saying exactly. Those stats, I think they're true, just because of what we go through trying to hire people. It's also the fact that because the world is so globalized now as well, its talent sits in different places, right? So you might find that in Dubai there's a shortage of certain skills you're looking for. You'll only be able to find them from somewhere else. But that means that they're losing. There's a brain drain in that country as well. So I think that's the reason we live in such a more globalized society that it's inevitable that people can look for opportunities anywhere in the world, and that never used to be the case. And that's why those statistics are saying what they're saying, that for the first time really in history we're seeing these numbers. But it's because I can get on a plane if I'm good enough and work anywhere in the world. So it's both a good thing and a bad thing, because when you have talent, when you have a brain drain, how do you grow that back? How do you try and attract that brain drain back? There are lots of factors behind that. I don't think we have time for that. But I agree with those numbers.
All right, and similarly to that, when I looked at the global hiring and recruitment market size, I saw a report which indicates that the global recruiting and job placement market was worth about $384.8 billion in 2024, and is projected to reach $644.7 billion by 2033. So if hiring keeps growing at this scale, will employment become easier to access or harder to enter?
What do they mean by the recruitment market? Are they talking about companies that make money off recruiting people?
Yes, like the global hiring process.
Ooh, Michelle.
So I think then, if it's going to be, from what you said, it's going to almost more than double, that means that either the companies are growing quicker and they need more talent to remain competitive, or how about upskilling current employees? Because what tends to happen, as we all know, the companies grow and there's more opportunities, we need to bring in more people. But also I think there's a space there of how can we retain our talent and probably upskill them to do like some of the more, the opportunities are coming. And I think then that will balance out. I don't know. This is just me talking off the top of my head. I don't know. That was a hard question.
Really hard.
Okay, so because what I wanted to understand is, okay, there's this, drive, okay, and of course, if you look at the markets, it's very competitive. It's a big business. So with the growth at this scale, would it be very easy for people to get jobs, or would it be hard for people to get jobs in the global hiring market? Looking at the scale,
again, it depends on on the scale. There's this this AI thing is not going anywhere, right? Like, it's just not going anywhere. So either you embrace it for certain parts of what you're doing,
okay,
like you augment it. There's certain jobs that are simply not going to exist in 5 to 10 years. They're just not going to exist because the AI, when it gets better and better, is going to be able to do your job. A legal clerk, for example, what is your job? Your job is to look at old law books, find precedent, give me a summary, and then present it to a judge or to a lawyer. The AI will do that in 10 seconds.
Okay.
Right? Accountants. You're still doing a BCom accounting? That's going to be very, very difficult. And then there's certain jobs that are going to be there forever, right? Teachers and nurses and lawyers, and doctors, they're always going to be there.
Do you think we'll be around?
I don't think so, honestly. I don't think recruiters are going to be around in 10 years. Yes, you'll have a human in the loop, right? Like somebody who's just going to be there to make sure that the judgment is correct. But somebody who's sitting there looking at CVs, interviewing candidates, presenting CVs, scheduling interviews, taking them through the process, presenting offers, those days are numbered.
I actually prepared a data for the AI thing. I think in course of the show we're going to look at it. But let's look at something about remote work. We can have this conversation without talking about remote work. So how has remote work changed what companies, organizations look for in candidates? Michelle.
Oh, so I've got a theory on this. Because so in the UK, when COVID happened, before COVID, all the companies were saying you must come into work, you must. So they had this thing about being present, and they gave chapter and verse why people couldn't work from home. And we've got like flexible working like we have over here, or less so over here, I would say. But when COVID hit, they found ways to manage people working from home. Then people got used to working from home, and so when I was like supporting some of my clients and they were saying, oh, we need that person to be able to come in every day. And I said, why? Why do they need to come in every day if they can be as equal equally productive, if not more, if they're working remotely. The manager is like, I need to see them. They need to be. And then I realise it's not a remote working problem. It's a manager's problem. It's a manager capability problem.
Okay.
So remote working can work. But I caveat that. There needs to be better communication or engagement when people are working remotely, because they can be disengaged from what's going on in the organisation. That can happen. They can be overlooked for promotion.
Okay.
That does happen, because it's so horrible to say, but when I see you, when we have meetings, if I'm going to see you, I'm going to remember you more than the ones I don't see. So that's a bit scary. But remote working can work. There just needs to be some engagement loop, some communication loop. There must be some, I call them keeping in touch days. There's got to be something. But yeah, I think it's more of a manager problem, to be fair, rather than a candidate problem.
So what do you look for, though? Like, before you hire somebody for a remote role, like, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, how engaged is that person? Like, do you already take responsibility, like, for the things that you do? So when I speak to somebody and I say, oh, it says on your CV X, Y, and Z, and immediately they say, yes, this is exactly what I did. I saw that the problem was X. I asked for resources, which is why we built a team, and this was the outcome of what I had seen. That person, is going to wake up every morning and get to work. They don't need somebody sitting over their shoulder telling them exactly what needs to happen. So that's what I look for. So if we're going to hire somebody remotely or hire somebody in a different country, I don't care about anything else on your CV. I just want you to be able to tell me about the initiative that you take. And you see those people, they're very, very easy to spot.
So is remote hiring changing how HR values a candidate?
Like what Michelle said, I would prefer a hybrid approach, right? So you have the best of both worlds. You are able to be productive, but you're also you're able to be seen as well. Michelle is spot on. I've never seen it happening where somebody gets a promotion, and they get lauded for the work that they do, and they're working 100% remote. I've just never seen it happening. So the hybrid approach: come in once or twice a week, be seen, speak to people, have chats around the coffee, is the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Now, still on remote work, I saw a report that says 70% of the workforce will work remotely at least part of the month by 2026. And 45% of companies plan to hire remote global workers by 2030. Also, around 435 million people already earn income from online gig, which is about 12.5% of the global workforce. So it looks like we're drifting to a world of remote work. So if people are going to be working remotely, how do they look for those jobs in 2026?
I don't know whether we're drifting towards. I feel like we're regressing, actually. That's just how I feel. I feel like we're moving backwards because, to your point, during COVID, everybody was like, well, we have to knuckle down and do this. But the minute that happened, the Amazons and the Googles, they were literally work from office mandates. You come in, if you don't like it, we'll find somebody else, right? That's what they did. So I actually think there's a regression of remote work. And in Dubai, it's even rarer, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, the hybrid approach is there, but it's very rare for a company in Dubai to hire somebody who's based outside of the country. I've never seen it happening. They want you to come to Dubai.
Okay. But if we look at the data, it actually seems that remote work, it's going to be part of the system, like a lot more. So most persons that are looking for jobs or looking to apply for roles, I want to know what kind of skills or what kind of mindset should they be on as they look to apply for such roles.
I think it's what you were saying about the initiative. I think if a candidate wants a purely remote role, I think in their interview, they have to give 100% more than somebody who's interviewing in person. I think that person has to show that they're self-starter, that they initiative, they can work by themselves. So saying things like, I'm so used to working by myself, I can get things done. I don't need someone looking after my shoulder. But at the same time, they say things, but if I need to escalate, because what managers don't want is for someone to just become their own manager.
Okay.
Yeah. They need to have the confidence in knowing, yes, that person is a self-starter, can do work, but if there's an issue, they know to make sure it's escalated up. So that managers need to know that they're still in a job, right? Okay. And it can be an ego thing as well, but they want to make sure that they still have oversight of what's going on. So I think remote workers, you have to push more.
Okay.
I think you have to do a bit more in your interviews for sure.
Amazing. I think we are actually running out of time and we need to wrap up, but we cannot leave this conversation without talking deeply about technology. Throughout the conversation, we mentioned AI, and I'm being told that Mr. Kagiso, probably in 10 years, your job is kind of... So is technology really transforming hiring?
It absolutely is. I think technology, the nice thing about it's a great equalizer, right? Anybody from anywhere in the world can go on LinkedIn and apply for a job, right? And that's technology. It certainly wasn't like that when my parents were growing up, right? So it won't be like that when my kids are growing up. So it's the great equalizer, and it has helped us as recruiters more efficiently screen, source, engage with talent. It's very, very important.
Okay, so just before we go, I want your...
So can I just quickly say something?
Okay, go ahead.
So you said it's an equalizer, and I agree. I just want to push back,
Okay.
because I think it all depends on the technology. I do a lot of work around bias.
Okay.
So my thing is, when they're screening, when you have like AI tools that screen like CVs and stuff like that, it's only going to be as good as the engine behind it. So I really do believe that technology is definitely going to expedite everything. But I always think to myself, how fair is that? We can do another podcast on that. Anyway,
that was too long.
That's too much of a
So, but I'll quickly, because I also saw data which says AI is expected to handle 95% of initial candidate screening by 2026. Also, AI adoption in HR jumped from 26% in 2024 to 43% in 2025. It is said that recruitment analytics tools can reduce time to hire by 20%. Wow. So the AI industry is about to it's about to wrap things up.
Yes.
But conclusively, before we leave the studio, I want you to give your piece of advice to job seekers across the world. Some persons looking to change jobs, and probably I've been getting no's from interviews. I want you to tell them what they should do differently this time.
I think it just goes back to making sure your CV is concise and making sure there's a cause and effect. So this is what I caused and this was the effect or the impact. I think there needs to be a clear demarcation, especially if AI is going to be running things. That's the people who are creating the AI, they want to see these things quickly, so it has to be on your CV. And I'll also go back to ensuring that your social capital is being matured and nurtured, because a lot of people will probably get into roles because of who they know as well.
Absolutely, like just being present, being there. And philosophically, a no is a not now. Maybe the role just wasn't right for you at that point. So pick up what you learned in that interview, take it forward, and the opportunity that presents itself might be the one for you.
Okay. Michelle, it's been an amazing time having this conversation with you. They call her the people's partner. So
I like that.
And Kagiso, it's an amazing conversation with you. And I know you watching this, you actually got a lot of insight, because part of what we do here is to make sure that we share insights and knowledge that's going to help shape your life and help you make the right decision. Now, hiring is more than filling roles; it's shaping lives, shaping companies, and of course, shaping the future of work itself. Now, today's conversation reminds us that getting hired isn't just about qualifications; it's about perception, timing, opportunity, and sometimes unseen human judgment. So whether you are a recruiter, leader, or someone chasing your next opportunity, the real question is this: are we really recognizing potential or just selecting what feels familiar? If you enjoyed this conversation and what we do here, kindly subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as support is really appreciated. Thank you so much, and bye for now.